curtail my snapping. Dan, have you got us all in shot?
Yeah.
Splendid. Well, thank you.
Patrick, sorry, if you were chairing, would it not be better if you were sitting in that seat?
Yeah, to be honest, that's probably a good idea. Thank you, Jerome. Alright. Slightly more visibility. Like that. Oh, this one. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And welcome to this meeting of Area Committee 3. Area Committee comprises the wards of Clifton, Clifton Down, Cottam and Hotwells and Harborside. My name is Patrick McAllister. I'm the councillor for Hotwells and Harborside. I'd just like to do a brief introduction of our councillors and then the officers attending, please. So, please.
Councillor Serena Wilston, Clifton Down.
Councillor Guy Potney, Cottam.
Councillor George Calashone, Clifton Down.
That's Mohammed Gary, Cottam.
Jerome Thomas, councillor for Clifton.
Thank you. We are, and then, so the officers, please.
Right, I'm Norman Cornthwaite, Democratic Services Officer.
I'm Ellie Stevens, the manager of the Community Resources team.
I'm Julie Fidillo, Community Resources Programme Manager.
I'm Frances Coates, Development Officer in Community Resources.
And I'm Josh Lerner, local council manager.
Thank you very much, and a big welcome to the members of the public who are attending today, please. Thank you. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the fire alarm does go, please leave the building as soon as possible via the main exits. Item 2 is apologies for absence. Can we note apologies from Councillor Paula O'Rourke, please? Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Does anyone have anything to declare? Thank you. I'll state for the record, I did assist in the preparation of a couple of the bids for Hotwells and Harborside, but that is not going to influence my decision making today. Minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes have been circulated in advance. Can I take it that the minutes are agreed? Can I have a seconder, please?
Yeah,
For the minutes?
yeah,
Thank you, George. Public forum, item 5, public forum. We've got a few items on public forum today, and if my computer lets me load, I will be able to see them. So, is Lloyd Roberts here?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you. Please, you have 1 minute, but judging by the number of people, I think we're okay to overrun slightly per person.
We're a voluntary group. The Friends of Edinburgh Library is a voluntary group, and we set up to promote the library and to promote links with the local community. We have quite a few events happening, some with quite popular writers. Tessa Hadley coming up in a month's time, Liz Brownlee, and some notable local prize winners. We need chairs for people to attend the meeting and be limited in the number of chairs inside the library. We have chairs stored outside the library, some additional chairs. During the lockdown period, the chairs suffered through weather damage. What we are bidding for is some new chairs and some outside storage that the chairs can be stored safely. And we just ask for the support in this bid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item on public forum is from Harry Searle, who I don't believe is here. George Holmes, who I also do not believe is here. And that does conclude the official public forum. Their statements, excuse me. We have questions from George Holmes, who is again not here. But Dan Aykroyd, who is here, did contact me in advance of the meeting today as he has a short question. And I thought, considering we've got quite a bit of time left.
Sorry, Chair. I think there
Yes.
was a submission from CDCA, Clifton Down Community Association, about the growing space, but I'm not sure if it was in time.
It wasn't in time.
No.
I see.
I saw the email over the weekend.
Oh, it's for
Yeah,
council.
we just didn't pick up until this morning, and the
Yeah.
deadline was last Thursday.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
I was myself on leave, unfortunately. I wasn't able to pick that up myself. So quickly from Councillor Pulteney.
So, just very quickly, I've just on pages 8, 9, 10, and I think it's just 8, 9 and 10, I've got some unusually sort of blacked out stuff, and I just want to check what that was. That wasn't something that was very heavily redacted, or I wasn't sure.
I had been planning to ask the officers that myself, actually. This is on the public-facing website.
Yeah, this is Democratic Services do the public forum, so it's got nothing to do with that.
Sorry, what?
On the public website,
Yes,
if you open the public
Yes.
forum document and scroll down to page 6 and 7 of the public forum document, it's all blacked out.
Oh. I don't know why that is. I didn't notice that before.
It's not like that on Civica, but then Civica is not. Oh no, it is like that on Civica. My mistake. It wasn't earlier. Regardless, I don't think we're missing public forum there. That's a mystery for another time.
It's not blacked out on the wall. It was on the website.
Oh, what have you got then?
Well, this is strange. Excuse me, sorry, we're having some visual glitches on the council systems, it seems. I apologise. I did want to, Dan Ackroyd did contact me in advance of the meeting. He has a quick question, which I don't, the officers may not be able to answer now, but I'd appreciate if we could maybe get him a written response.
Yeah.
So Dan, please take it away.
Not a controversial one for a change. Are area committees the right place for people to raise concerns about the details of transport schemes, or should people contact their local councillors? The context is the Park Street scheme. In particular, there's a couple of places where cyclists and pedestrians are going to be interacting on a blind corner. It's going to lead to collisions. I've already raised this at the Transport Committee, but that's apparently not the right place to raise those concerns, as they got dismissed by the officers. Where's the right place to say, hey, I don't think this design is safe?
I mean, my immediate thought would be public consultation, which presumably I don't have details of it at the tip of my fingers. But if that date's been missed, we'll come back to you.
If you send me the details of the public consultation.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you. Do you have Dan Ackroyd's contact details, or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Are you, Dan? Are you happy?
I'll leave the last meeting.
Great, thank you.
Sure, Democratic Services does.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure that there are some. And maybe Josh, we can talk about that. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I believe, unless I'm missing something, that we do have a hand. Would you like to do a public forum?
Yeah, if there's time, could I have 1 minute?
I think we're a maximum of 30 minutes for public forum, so I'm very happy to allow a statement quickly. Yes.
Well, just very quickly, just a quick word in support of the bid for to fix the ponds in Brandon Hill. They haven't been working for a couple of years. The pump's broken. I filled in the form to bid for that. I was told by procurement how much the pump was and the money that was needed. So the money that I'm asking for is a result of what I've been told by procurement. If I got the bid, I would love to work alongside the council and do what I can to get that figure down to a minimum. But the money aside, I think it's an excellent project to do. It's good for the nature, good for the wildlife, it's good for the public. It looks derelict and a mess. It's a great shame it's been like that for 2 years.
Thank you very much indeed. And Guy, you had a hand before we conclude public forum.
It was just to say, it looks as though, looking at the statement from George Holmes on statement B02, he makes reference to photos having been included. And I'm wondering if we've not been able to see those, but it's just to let members of the committee know that one of them is apparently an upside down car
I've seen that.
on the road that he's asking to. That would have a certain persuasive weight, I think, to it. So I just want to make sure that.
I hadn't put 2 and 2 together on that one actually. Thank you very much, Guy. Yes, it's a shame you can't see those photos, and I do wonder if Democratic Services might be able to send those around. Well, after the meeting, maybe.
Yeah, I certainly
we will have made decisions by then.
And for some reason they must have got blacked out when it was loaded onto the modern .gov system.
Okay. If that could maybe be noted as an area to check for in future, please.
I'll circulate them to everyone after the meeting.
But I think there should be maybe since the there was a switch to the online form for public forum, maybe that's had an impact. It would be good if there can be a reliable way for people to be able to submit photo evidence to public forum. Councillor Roston?
Yeah, just a quick one. Mr. Holmes did contact me to say he wanted to show photographs at the physical meeting, and I suggested he got in touch with Democratic Services to see if there was a big screen in the room. I know obviously there is in the chamber, but not necessarily here. I don't know if you made contact with any of you to say
All
that's
I
how
received was
show it.
just his statement and the photos.
Right. Okay. Because that was his original plan, I think. That's
Okay.
probably why we got a bit of confusion around it. But yeah, I think we should see it because I have seen those photos in the past, and so has Councillor Calshoni, and they do bring the need home quite
Thank
definitively.
I will circulate them after the meeting to all
And
the members.
to yourself.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and thanks very much for that. That does conclude public forum. Thank you to everyone who participated. The next item on the agenda is the election of chair. Dan Ackroyd may remember at the November meeting we agreed that we would have this item in this meeting. I've greatly enjoyed working as chair, but I have been now elected as chair of the finance subcommittee, so I believe at this juncture it's sensible for me to step back from some other commitments to better focus on that role. So I won't be putting myself forward for this election, but I will be chairing the rest of this committee meeting, and obviously I'll work with whoever is elected as chair to make sure there is a smooth handover. So I would like to ask if anyone would like to propose another member of the committee to be the next chair of Area Committee 3.
I would like to propose Guy Poultney.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second.
Thank you. So all those if there are any other proposals? Okay, thank you. All those in favour of Guy Poultney being elected as chair of the Area Committee? All right, thank you. That is unanimous. Congratulations, Guy. And as I stated, I'll chair the rest of this meeting, but from then on, Guy Poultney will be taking over as the chair of the Area Committee. Next, item 7, Community Resources Update. I don't know if this is where the officers might like to say a few words.
Yes, this is me. So this is the bit where I run through what you've got in your pot, and then we hand back to you for your discussion about what you want to prioritise and which stage 1 proposals you'd like to put forward. Just a slight update on the papers that you've got in front of you. When we wrote the papers and submitted them, we had figures up until the 31st of December, but we've now got updated figures for the 31st of March. I'm assuming everyone has already seen the background section, and I don't need to go through that, but if you skip to section C in my paper, the Community Infrastructure Levy item, Area Committee 3 has an overall sum of £81,137.65 as of the latest calculation, which is the 31st of March. And there's a link there to the report if anyone wants to see it. And in terms of what you've got in by way of proposals, you had a total of 8 stage 1 forms that were put through, with a total funding request of £145,389. I did also just want to bring to your attention that there were, let me just check how many it was, I think it was 2. Yeah, there were 2 additional proposals from 2023 that were deferred at the time because of insufficient funding. Applicants were contacted at that time to be told there's insufficient funding for your proposal to be considered, but it will be deferred for consideration at a later date. So I can share those with you. They're not on the papers, are they? Because they came through later. So I'll share what those were with you when we get to the point where we're going through the list of proposals to see if there's still things that you want to prioritise. That's it on SIL. Then we move on to the equity fund. Your area had no proposals come forward that were eligible for the equity fund this year, so you don't have any kind of prioritisation work to do there to put things forward. But just for context, hopefully you've all seen the kind of information about the equity fund. We all came to one of the briefings to understand a bit more about what that is. There's £140,804.51 in the pot for the equity fund, which is a citywide fund for areas of greatest deprivation or equalities-led organisations and projects. So that bit we won't need to discuss any further today. And then we go on to section E. So this is your section 106 funding. You've got £27,344.70 in the section 106 pot as of the 31st of March. All of that funding is designated specifically for tree planting. You don't have a stage 2 tree planting proposal to consider and allocate funding to, and that is because of the discussion that we had in the last meeting in December, when some of you will remember the proposal was to plant some of those trees outside of Area Committee 3's boundaries, so it was using space on the downs to plant trees, and the committee voted against doing that and asked the tree officer to look for locations within the Area Committee. His kind of response is at this time there's no further space that he can find within Area Committee 3, so he doesn't have a proposal for that 27k at this time. So no tree planting proposal to consider. The only thing to be aware of on that front is that one of those specific tree planting contributions of section 106 for £9,204, it does expire. It has an expiry date of the 6th of February 2029. So you may want to make a decision by that point to get it allocated, but obviously you've still got a bit of time now. And then moving on to F, we've got an update on a previous scheme. So this is just to let you know that a project that was awarded funding in 2022 for a project at Arlington Garden, this was allocated £11,500. Basically, the update is that some investigatory works went on, and it was found out that Parks, who had been originally allocated the funding, aren't actually responsible for the garden. It's actually a community space. So Parks have spent £575 of that money doing some initial works, but the rest of the money will be grant funded to the community organisation. So that's just an update to let you know that the delivery body of that project is changing, but the nature of the work will be exactly the same. And we'll be obviously putting a grant agreement in place with that organisation and getting that funding across to them. So that is everything in terms of my update. The next two pieces are after we've gone through the stage 1 proposals and we hand over to Josh. So this is your time to share your kind of prioritisation, how you'd like to allocate your funding, your £81,000 that you've got in the pot. And the last thing I wanted to just let you know is that on the paper that you've got that says the list of stage 1 forms, the one that's the table with all the proposals in it, we put your prioritisation in there in terms of what we received. Some of the prioritisation we received after the papers had been published, so some people's prioritisation may not be in the table. So you may want to just say verbally, I would prioritise this project, because it may not have made it onto the paperwork. We have to get things across very early, especially when there's a bank holiday, so sometimes that doesn't quite work out.
Thank you very much, Lee, for that. Do we have any questions for the officers before we enter the discussion phase? Mr. did I see your hand?
I believe we had some questions about rankings that you were going to propose.
Yes, indeed. So I did want to just quickly check what the purpose of the rankings was for, please, for the public record. So there was a bit of confusion, I'm afraid, and perhaps I missed this during a chair's briefing. But so what the purpose of them was for, because obviously we're making a decision about what we're prioritising in this meeting now.
Yeah.
Was
purely for your own kind of for assisting this discussion. So if you've done some prior thinking about what you would like to propose as your number 1 priority, it can aid these discussions. We have some area committees that are looking at 70 proposals or something, and so knowing what their top 5 are really helps the discussion to go forward. If something has no councillor's priority against it, it maybe doesn't get discussed in the meeting. We have limited time, so it's purely for kind of aiding this deliberative process that you're about to go into.
Thank you. In the event that we end up with sufficient funding for the two I'm looking at right now is the funding for improvement of the Branton Hill Play Park and restoring the Hillsborough Estate Playground. Assuming we had allocated funding to both of those, and then the Play Parks team said we only got capacity to do one of them, would they prioritise the Branton Hill one because that's got a higher priority ranking, for instance? Would they take that into account, or would that come back to us for a decision?
So once we've allocated funding to a project, in terms of the order of that being delivered by the team that are delivering it, or the organisation that are delivering it, that kind of leaves the area committee sphere, I suppose, in that it's to do with the department prioritising their workload, who have they got who can do the work, how quickly does the procurement happen, that kind of, then they programme it into their schedule of works. So they wouldn't be taking into account your priority ranking in terms of how quickly they delivered something. It would be much more about their own work scheduling.
Okay, thank you. That is helpful. Does that answer people's questions about priority rankings then? Or does anyone have a follow-up? Councillor Thompson.
I think that what we are hearing is that it is not a formal part of the deliberative process.
Exactly.
So in terms of the formal approach, that will be when we actually review the projects for deciding whether we're going to give them money or not, and no applicants for funds should be under any delusions about what that informal ranking means at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe it's worth us just clarifying that in the paperwork, that this is a deliberative tool rather than something that holds any kind of decision-making weight.
That would be very
100%,
helpful.
so it's a bit confusing.
Sorry, no, Guy had his hand up first.
It was just to ask, in relation to some of the projects, I'm thinking that there are Brandon Hill Play Park and Hillsborough Estate Playground, as well as, what's the other obvious one? The heritage lampposts in Clifton struck me as things that might be addressed through the standard programme of maintenance that the council conducts, as in the lampposts themselves are heritage assets that the council is required to maintain, and the playground equipment, something that's also delegated to area committees for decision in terms of an annual work programme. I'm just wondering what effect that has on how we prioritise them now, or what effect our prioritisation will have on that.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, is that something where we could prioritise something only for parks to come back and say, well, we're going to do that piece of, we want to do that piece of work anyway, or thank you for spending still money on this. That means we can now spend the money that we would have spent on that on something else. How does the sequencing work in relation to standard?
That's a really good question. So, in general, kind of maintenance of, to keep things safe, and for, like with a playground, for example, if there's any doubt that a piece of equipment is kind of unfit for use and causing risk to people, then yes, that would be something that parks would kind of be scheduling into their maintenance. But we do send all of the project proposals that come in to parks for comment, so they would have highlighted during that process if this was something that was kind of on their maintenance schedule. So what that suggests to me, if they haven't said this, we'd be doing this anyway, is that it's seen as more than maintenance. It's about a new piece of equipment, or, I mean, I haven't looked at exactly what those proposals are for, but yeah, so purchasing play equipment. So if it's improving the playground in a bigger way than just kind of making something fit for use, then that would be an eligible expenditure of SIL and wouldn't be something that parks would be doing anyway, if you see what I mean.
Okay, thanks. It's sorry, I did see your hands ringing, but that does strike me as a bit strange, because we've got a funding application here in for replacing a broken pump in Brandon Hill, which does seem like the very definition of what should be regular maintenance. Now, I appreciate the park's budget is extremely stretched, so that they're holding out for this money, but I think that perhaps the rules aren't quite reflecting reality in this situation.
I wonder if that's because it's not a safety hazard. I think that their maintenance schedules are purely about making things safe for people, rather than about kind of enhancements or yeah. I mean, I can't comment from kind of absolute definitive because parks aren't here, but I would imagine that's what they would say, is that they keep playgrounds safe because there's a risk, there's a health and safety risk, but there's not a health and safety risk if the pump is broken.
Okay, thank you. Serena, did you have another question?
No, I didn't. It's fine. It's been resolved since. Thank you.
Guy, again?
No, it does make me want to look at this Hillsborough Estate Playground bid in a little bit more detail, because either I don't see when the proposal is, we propose to remove the old, degraded and rust-covered existing play equipment, how that could be anything over the general maintenance, if that's accurate. So we're in one situation or the other. And I always worry when these things sort of come to this point, in that when you raise queries about it, questions about it, suggest that you're against getting the play equipment replaced, which isn't the case. It's about whether Parks and Play have to do it because it's their job to do it and it's their budget to do it, or whether we have to assign the community infrastructure levy money to do it because they haven't done it, or actually, are we getting something extra? Is there value added from going through this process? But no comment other than they're supportive in principle, if feasible. So yeah.
Okay. One thing you could do is that
Please.
is just to you can always invite something forward with a condition. So you could say in principle we would like to invite this forward to stage 2, but before that happens we'd like a conversation with the Parks Department about whether it would happen anyway, and then we could hold off contacting the applicant until we've had that conversation. So you can always attach conditions to the kind of the discussions we have today, if that helps.
Yeah.
That sounds
Very
quite helpful for later, thank you. If there are no more questions, I would like to move on to the discussion portion of this item. Before I do, I would just like to acknowledge that we did very much want to hold public meetings to help determine the priorities here. Unfortunately, we weren't able to arrange these with our nominated community connector, despite contacting them a month before the deadline that the priorities were needed. I would like to apologise for this on behalf of the area committee. It was not intentional, it was not ideal, it frankly caused significant frustration. We tried reaching out a few different ways, but unfortunately between people being on holiday and just slow email replies, we weren't able to get those sorted. So I apologise for that, and I very much hope we'll be able to do more public consultation before the stage 2 decisions. Moving on to the discussion, I'm happy to kick things off as chair, but also equally happy to give way if someone else would like to get things going.
Go for it.
Councillor Thomas, and I will just say,
I think in terms of what we're doing here, which is looking at how much of this 140,000 odd requests we're taking forward with a maximum pot of 80, that's quite a good ratio in terms of application to chances of success. I'm quite happy for most things to move forward to the next stage as they stand. I would say that with the cathedral's request for up to 40,000, I would suggest capping that at 10,000 would be the most that we would be prepared to consider.
Okay. So yes, for the benefit of the public, this is a proposal to use the area, the west end of the cathedral, so you can see it as you walk past out there actually, there's a little patch of gravel, to model how brownfield sites can become areas of meanwhile wilding, improving biodiversity and appearance. The site will be open to public and local schools, and it effectively just re-awarding the area. The application was for £40,000 of area committee funds with £10,000 of match funding, which will be sourced from elsewhere. Thank you, Councillor. I apologise if I'm slipping up and using people's first names. I shouldn't be doing that in a semi-formal setting. Any other comments for the discussion? Sorry, Guy, Councillor Pontley was first and then Councillor Roston.
I've spoken a lot already, I'm happy to yield.
I was just simply going to add about the cathedral project. Lovely as it sounds, that does sound a significant amount of money for a rewilding scheme. So I agree with Councillor Thomas there.
Okay, Councillor Pontley?
No, I think I agree very much with the sentiments expressed by Councillor Thomas and Councillor Ralston. I just wanted to flag a couple of things. One was that obviously there were no submissions from Cotton this time, largely because we were absolutely overwhelmed with requests for transport schemes. Didn't believe they were going to be accepted, only to find a proposal for bike schemes had come through. So we're kind of keen to at least try and have a go at doing some of that in the ward. And just to say, whilst Cotton does not have a library, of course Redland Library is in Clifton Down, the library in all have slightly unusual names. The old Lockleys Library was called Eastville Library, and all sorts of. But it is very much Cotton's community library is the one at Redland, which is in Clifton Down. So just to very much be in support of that, as what sounds like a very worthwhile scheme as well. But it does sound like this point, we'd be doing well to take all of them forwards,
Thank you.
with the exception of the, with that note going back to the cathedral, that 10,000 at most, I think, for what sounds like it's a temporary rewilding as well.
Yeah, it is for meanwhile. I'm seeing Eddie's hand here, and I was wondering if you could maybe clarify the situation with the cycle racks as well, please.
Why that came through? Is that the...
When transport schemes in general were disallowed?
Yeah, basically because it's a charity applying for funding, so they would be delivering the work, so it doesn't have any kind of resource implication on transport. And the discussion that we had with transport was that if it was on a highway and therefore would require transport resource, those locations couldn't be considered this year because transport are not doing any, are having this fallow year. But those bike stands could, for example, be in a community centre car park or elsewhere where it would be a private discussion between the charity and the landowner, put the bike racks in, doesn't require any transport resource to make it happen. So that's why it's in there still, as opposed to, so it doesn't have to be a transport scheme because it's being delivered by a sort of separate delivery body. Hopefully that makes sense.
So transport schemes that don't cost the council anything would have been allowed through.
If they were, it's not about the cost to the council, it's about the fact that things like, everything requires like a TRO or like transport resource is required as in people resource. So things like bike sheds in a, it might be related to transportation, but it wasn't related to the transport team and their resource and their delivery.
So I think we'll be hearing more about this in the later item, but my understanding from the previous discussions has been that even if you want to install some cycle hoops on a pavement which is adopted highways land, then the highways department has to come in and do an evaluation of that. Whereas if you install them 5 feet away on parks land, it's parks who have to do the analysis, which I appreciate from the outside and maybe even the inside looks a bit like the council can't figure out which part of itself it needs to talk to do something simple. But highways are incredibly overstretched at the moment, and we do have to stick with the way things work. But I appreciate how frustrating it is.
Let's pick it up under the next item then.
Okay, thank you.
Would it be okay to just add, just while you're having these conversations, just that I mentioned the 2 deferred schemes, like it's a good time for me to tell you what those were, just in case you want to consider them at all. Is that okay?
Go for it.
So one of those was for Clifton, and it was for refurbishment of the Heritage Railways on Birdcage Walk, and it was requesting £30,000. Another one was multiple wards, Clifton, Hotwells and Harborside, Hotwells communal garden improvements. Project to support local residents to improve the communal garden spaces in Hotwells, including Cumberland Piazza, Hillsborough Flats, Charles Place Play Park, Carrick House and St Peter's House. And that was for £3,000. So those were 2 applications that were received at the last round of meetings and deferred to this time. So.
Thank you. Were these in the papers? Have I missed those somehow?
No, they weren't in the papers because they had been wrongly listed as Area Committee 2.
I see.
So I can send you an email with the full kind of like the details that we've got.
I see.
Now, if that's helpful, but that's why.
I don't know what the committee is minded personally. Those both sound lovely. I'm not really comfortable signing off on something which I haven't seen the details of. Councillor Poltney?
Slightly aware that might not be the default position. I'm aware of an ombudsman report from not so long ago where it's very difficult for us to preclude items for consideration without subjecting them to public scrutiny or examination. It's a lot easier to take it forward potentially from a legal point of view than to exclude it at this point. I think we're kind of left with no choice but to progress both schemes, but with I'd say with a hefty asterisk next to them to say that we need to work these up, because presumably they've been deferred having gone through a completely different process.
They got to this stage last time and then weren't, and not that they weren't put forward, but that there wasn't any money, so they weren't considered, as far as I understand it.
Okay.
Right.
if I could check what the officer's understanding of the legal situation there is, certainly if we do take it forward, I would like that asterisk to be heavily inked, just for the applicant's benefit as much as anything else. Councillor Thomas?
Did you say the railings in St Andrews in the kind of graveyard?
Yeah, railings on Birdcage Walk, it says.
Yeah, okay. Could you read out again the list of the places for community gardens? It was Carrick House was one of them, and I think it was Royal Bible.
Of course, yeah. It was Cumberland Piazza, Hillsborough Flats, Charles Place Play Park, Carrick House and St Peter's House.
So it's some in Clifton, some in Wasn't Harbour.
Yeah.
But interestingly, that's a long list for an application that's asking for £3,000. So it's,
Yeah.
I don't, yeah.
Is there a was there an individual or organisation that put those forward? Probably HCCA, was it?
Let me see. Hot Wells Communal Garden Improve. Oh, hang on, where's the organisation? Okay, so sorry, I've got to look at a different spreadsheet to tell you who applied. You can come back to me. If you want.
Thank you. We will come back to that to give it due
So
consideration.
we're proposing then that these do go forward to stage 2. Is that what you're proposing?
Councillor Portney?
It is, yeah. I don't think we have any choice but to. That said, I do think it's, of course, the other side of it is that we would then have schemes that have been advertised in advance, we've had public forum on, that would then potentially be competing for officer resource in the future against schemes that were never subjected to the same level of scrutiny. So I'd say this is a really key one where if that prioritisation, however informal it is that we're doing today, ever needs to be used, as it were, to decide what to do with the scheme or not to do with the scheme, that just comes back to the committee as soon as possible for a steer. The other thing was, just before we move to any further with this, I did notice under I in the report is a note of the public equalities duty. Great to be reminded of what we should have done at the end of the decision-making process. Or possibly best to just flag that up now, that all councillors have to apply their minds to public sector policies duties before we do any prioritisation.
What I'm hearing from the committee is that we'd like to probably progress those two with very hefty asterisks so that we're able to subject them to full scrutiny and public consideration, scrutiny as well, in the future. As I said, please can we have those asterisks very heavily inked on and let the applicants know the situation here, just to avoid raising false hopes potentially. We may see these and decide we would like to fund them, but it's very hard to say not having seen the proposals in advance of this meeting.
So we can definitely send you that information. Is it worth us just doing a quick sum? So we'd be minusing 30k for the cathedral, wouldn't we? And then adding on those two additional, just so that you know how much you're kind of over-committing by. And obviously more funding will come in between now and October as well, so you're likely to have more than 81 in the pot by the time we get there.
I think we might not be finished with our discussions, but that would be a very good.
We'll work on that while we continue discussing, and I'm still looking for those delivery organisations.
Councillor Roston?
Yeah, I just wanted to add my comments about Redland Library. It's a very modest proposal. The cost is very modest, but I believe has big benefits because of the amount of events that are run there. And I think it would benefit the wider community. There's very few, if any, real community spaces in Clifton Down Ward, and they do hold a very enriching cultural programme, evening events. So just having some chairs and not having to cross a busy road with them back and forth would be very beneficial.
Okay, thank you very much. Just seemed like a very worthy scheme. Any other comments before I jump in with mine?
I've got one more, but
okay. I would just like to say I'm very supportive of the funding to replace the broken pump in Brandon Hill. I think it's a real shame what the state of the fountains and the ponds up there at the moment, because, and I have to say, when I went to look at the pump, last maintained 1995, installed 1965, I think it was. It's not, I think it's the only surprising thing is that it lasted this long. And I think it does point to the wider issue that Bristol Council's had with not maintaining important assets and then being left with a much more disruptive and costly bill at the end of it all. I'm very much in favour of that. The funding for improvement of Branton Hill Play Park in my ward as well, I really like the idea. I think there's a wider conversation citywide about for how we fund these strategic locations. Perhaps this might be a bit something which could benefit from strategic SIL in the future. But for now, I think this is a really good start. I quite like the life cycle one as well. It seems like give money to a charity, get new cycle hoops installed at minimal disruption. I think that's probably a win we can all get behind, I hope. And I do take the steer of the committee regarding the cathedral rewilding. I think it's a nice idea, but it is a lot of money, and I take the committee's steer on that one that I've heard. And that's all for the projects in my ward. I don't think we've had any stinkers that we absolutely wouldn't fund. It's been a pretty strong round of applications actually, which I'm very happy about. So I don't know if anyone has. I'm happy to take most of these forward with the caveat on the cathedral. But we'll finish the discussion and we can put that to a vote.
Just to note Clifton Down growing space as well, so it's had a fantastic start. It's already got beds in place. It's the only growing space in the ward again in Clifton Down, despite its name. We don't have any public open space. So it's been a lovely scheme, and this application would allow them, I believe, to have another 15 rows of planters, so allowing more people to start producing their own food. So I think it's a very worthy, very exciting scheme. I've been down there to see it several times, so has Councillor Calashoni, so yeah. Great.
Thank you very
one
much.
other quick follow-up point, not on this, but I believe we were going to talk about the cycle scheme. Gave some more information on the applicants.
Yes.
Coming to talk to us all.
Okay, so it's all, we can,
Yeah.
that's fair. So we'll bounce back to the cycle scheme quickly. There was quite a feeling from the members of the area committee that we would really benefit from having a bit more information about life cycles proposals. Obviously this is just the stage 1 form, stage 2 form, we'll be much more in detail. But as local councillors, we are very well placed to advise on suitable locations for cyclones. We know where spots of high demand are, which areas are underserved. I think I'm a keen cyclist myself. I definitely know where I struggle to lock up around my ward. So it'd be really useful to be able to coordinate with life cycle about where to put these cycle hoops. So I don't know if that would be something they'd be planning for. I think it's certainly something we would like to see happen, and to be quite blunt, would probably make it at the meeting later this year make us feel a bit more friendly towards granting the funding if it had happened.
So that would be like a condition. You could put that as a condition. You're inviting them to stage 2 on the basis that the locations that they suggest are drawn up in consultation with you, in conversation with you.
Yeah, or at least knowing who to call to say, would one here be okay?
Yeah.
That would be great.
Absolutely, that's fine. We can make a note of that.
But putting that as a condition sounds very sensible. Councillor Thomas?
I think what I think is that we've got exactly the same process that will be happening in every other area committee around, how this might work well, and then there would be some benefit in life cycle talking to all councillors about what their citywide plans are, what they can offer across the city, because we'll just be repeating the same conversations in each area committee. So if there's some way down the brief with all councillors, that would be good.
I think that's something to look behind. I think the idea about putting that as a condition, I think I'm going to take that as agreed from the committee, assuming we do put that forward to stage 2.
Yeah.
Great. Councillors McCarthy and Calashoni, is there anything you guys would like to contribute to this, or are you happy with the conversation as so far?
I think everything said I generally agree with, and there's no extra points that I want to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
can I just respond about the organisations who put those bits forward that Councillor Thomas asked about? So it was Friends of Birdcage Walk was the repairing the railings in Birdcage Walk, and then Hot Wells and Clifton Community Association who put forward the one about the community gardening.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you. Do you have the proposed interim funding estimates before we take a vote?
So just in terms of your predicted, just because it might be helpful, your predicted kind of to be treated with caution figure for what you'll have when you come to actually make your decisions is about £100,000. And then if you were to do everything that you've just said, so that's funding everybody but putting a cap on the cathedral of 10k, you'd be committing 148,389. So you would be going over by about 50%. An overspend on your current pot of about £67,251.35. So that is quite a big overcommitment. It's worth bearing in mind that that means that, you know, especially if you're inviting community organisations forward, you may be disappointing people who've put work into a proposal. That doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's just worth considering.
Thank you. I know on a couple of these we are waiting, certainly on the ponds one, we are waiting on what estimates on, I've asked parks today actually, what will this actually cost you, and so that estimate might come down a fair amount, potentially, and likewise it would think, you know, a lot of this might depend on how much work, you know, departments have capacity for, like play parks for instance. Does anyone have any comments on that? Councillor Potley?
It was just to say that we have had an item public forum in support of the library project, which is the most, I think, modest scheme that's been put forward today. I feel I'd be being slightly derelict if we didn't put some emphasis on saying, I would be astonished if we couldn't fund that. Like, it's a very, very small ask for a scheme that obviously delivers very, very substantial value in terms of the value of that asset as a community facility. And I just really want to not say that any of the less worthy or less worthwhile. I do think that's £3,000 for something like that, I think deserves recognition.
Thank you. If that could that emphasis be limited, please? Thank you very much.
Just one other thing that might be helpful for consideration is that the proposal for the restoration of heritage lampposts, the quote has been given up to 20k, and there's a note saying as much as can be funded. So that's another one where you could look at thinking, you know, they're saying as much as you've got in your pot.
Thank you. And my understanding is even if we invite someone to draw up a stage 2 proposal for 40k, we can still say, well, I'm afraid we can only give you 20.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there is potential to, that would be disappointing, but it wouldn't hopefully be crippling to ambitions to fund improvements for areas when we get to stage 2. With this in mind, Councillor Rossi?
Sorry, and just to go over old ground, apologies, so I'm clear. I think you were saying that it was going to be a bit of a request for clarification on maintenance and whether one of the playgrounds, Hillsborough, fell into the maintenance budget because it was replacing what might be, I'm not saying it is, what might be unsafe equipment. So that could be that would possibly come out of here, if that were the case.
Yes, so you could potentially invite parks to develop a full proposal following a conversation about whether this should be covered by sale or whether this should be part of their maintenance schedule. So you could have that conversation first, and the condition would be we'd want to understand that this otherwise is not going to happen.
Because that's a fair chunk, isn't it? Yeah, I would need that.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Potley?
No, it's just to echo that and go a little further, really, in terms of both. My understanding was that part of the terms of reference for area committees covered parks and play equipment and an annual consultation on that. It might be that this committee wishes to prioritise these schemes as part of that process as well. So I think when we're agreeing to take this forward at the moment, certainly encourage parks to look at the 2 schemes in their backyards, whether Brandon Hill Play Park and Hillsborough Estate Playground should both be considered in response to that. I'm not quite cheeky enough to suggest that Clifton Down growing space could be done under the auspices of new allotments, but it's not far potentially from it. There are possibly other ways of delivering the community rewilding at substantially lower budgets. I think as ward councillor they should be engaging with you on, frankly. be great to see if, how libraries feel about using some of the library's budget to match funds to increase the value of their community asset there. And equally, the cycling scheme and the heritage lampposts could be looked at in respect of the transport schemes that are due to be coming for this community as well. So, while we're taking them forwards, I'd hope that we could knock down some of the costs of delivery to being, as I say, part of the regular revenue budgets with departments concerned, rather than a total spend just taken from sales.
Thank you. No, I agree personally with the principles there. I think we've probably reached a consensus here. Do you require? I'm guessing you require a formal vote.
I think Norman probably does. So.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Can we just clarify what exactly you're proposing?
Yes. So I'll propose that we are taking forward all the schemes listed here, plus the two which have been mentioned. We're going to invite them all to come to stage 2, with heavy caveats around the 2 holdover schemes that we really need to have some more scrutiny of those. With asterisks net for life cycle, that we would like to engage with them about locations and get a bit more of an idea about what they're planning. That we would cap the cathedral's proposal at a maximum of 10,000, if indeed anything. I may be missing something. We put a few caveats in here.
And other things to come out of other pots.
And yes, also, of course, thank you, yes, and pending confirmation of what might be eligible to come out of other funding pots. I hope that's clear. Are people happy to vote on that proposal?
Yeah.
Right, thank you. So if I could ask the people those in favour of that proposal to... Guy, you're scowling at me.
No, that's my face.
Okay, if I could ask those in favour of that proposal to raise their hands, please. Thank you very much. That's carried unanimously. Thanks, thank you all.
Can I just make one quick point about the other funding pots conversation?
Yes.
So what will happen next is that the people who would be delivering those proposals will be told, yes, you're being invited to stage 2, now develop a stage 2 proposal. What I would suggest then is that our role there would be to say, and councillors have asked that they could have a conversation with you in the development of that stage 2 proposal about the exact budget, what that looks like, and whether there's any scope for any match funding or additional funding to be found from elsewhere. And then they would need to contact you to have that conversation as part of the development of the stage 2 proposal. Does that sound like an okay way to go about that kind of process?
I think so, yes. I believe so.
My query is if things are scheduled to be coming to this committee, like the parks is, what my query has always been with the processes being such as they are, is how do we know that we're not, in other words, are we funding something that should have been happening anyway before we know what they're proposing to do this year? And there's a sequencing problem, I think, in terms of the agenda setting process for area committees. So I suppose the question would be is that what are Parks' proposed spends for each of the wards in the area committee area, and when are we going to see those?
So that's a really good point. So this year, because we're obviously implementing those new kind of functions of area committees for the first time this year, they're kind of coming into effect as we speak, or we're getting there with them. Parks are going to be coming to the September, your sort of interim online meeting in September, which hasn't yet been scheduled. But going forward, that could happen in March, which would mean that you'd have had that conversation, seen that information before you have this meeting, for example. So every year you'll always have a May and a November formal meeting where you make decisions in person, as we're doing today, and then 2 additional online meetings where things like those consultation conversations can happen. So the scheduling can be made such that happens earlier next year. It's just that this year we didn't have a meeting in March because we weren't ready yet to make that happen. So that's why you haven't had that information yet this year. It will come in September, which is obviously slightly late. You probably want to have a conversation with Parks not in that meeting earlier in order to for it to inform your decision making.
Does that resolve your...
It answers the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am noting we've got a hand up from the public. We don't have... There's no more provision for public forum at this point anyway, but I'm very happy to chat to you afterwards if you want. Unless I'm happy. Unless we're happy to just... All right, if you want to ask a question.
Just very briefly, in terms of the budget for the pumps and so on, I don't know what form is with the council and whether this has been done before, but I run lots of projects, and if I were allowed to run this project, I could smash the figure which you see on the form, and I can massively reduce it. That figure comes from the council, but I've done research, I know what procurement quoting, I could make that much cheaper. I just need to be allowed to do it, and I do everything transparently. You can see all the figures, it'd be a great job. I just need to be allowed to do it. So that was all I wanted to say.
Thank you. And yeah, I think that's something where I'd want, as the ward councillor, I would want to work with Parks Department to try and make that happen and bring that figure down a bit more. So we will move on then to item 9, which is transport projects update, and I think over to you then.
Great, alright, nice to meet you all. So yeah, I joined the council in September, so I guess over the last 7 months I've been trying to get to grips with area committees, what's happening, what hasn't happened, and what the future looks like and what not. Been quite an interesting experience. It's taught me a lot, and I think there's some key things obviously that we want to talk about today. I'm sure there's other bits that will come up organically as well. But yeah, just by way of update for this one, for area committees in general, there's 61 sort of existing projects across all area committees with, at the moment, approximately £2 million shortfall in funding. Now, that is for a variety of reasons. I'm happy to go into detail on that, if you like, or if this is the right reason, I'm not sure, but I'm happy to talk about why that is. But I do know that resourcing is a big part of that, and we went for a restructure recently in 2024, and we've now got a team that I manage, which looks after area engineering, road safety, and other elements too. And my job is to make sure that we get that team resourced up fully. We're nearly there. We've kind of done about 75% of our recruitment. We have struggled to recruit to some of the more senior positions, engineering-wise, which is causing some slight issues, but we're dealing with that accordingly and looking externally. And recruitment is ongoing as well. So that's, I guess, the key challenge at the moment is the shortfall and the sheer backlog of schemes. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is to the point where we've got a smooth running machine that is delivering the best outcomes for your area committees and Bristol, and they've been delivered on time. That's clearly not always been the case historically. So that's kind of one of the main reasons why I took this role, was to try and make this the right process and make our team delivering the schemes that you need. So moving forward, I guess my first priority is to get the schemes delivered within your area committees. That's my first priority, so we can, I guess, clear that backlog. And we put forward a proposal to have a fallow year for new transport schemes this year to allow me to get the backlog of schemes cleared, really. And for next year, we can then start moving proactively into new schemes that are actually going to be delivered in the best manner possible. Again, I'm happy to go into that in a lot of detail. I've got some thoughts on that, how we can make it work better across all elements of project delivery. But some of the key challenges we're facing are go from anything from inflationary pressures to materials. For example, a drop curb now costs about 200% more than it did probably when we started doing drop curb schemes in about 3 or 4 years ago. So any schemes below 2k, 200% uplift. That's kind of one of many reasons why lower value schemes are very, very difficult to deliver, because it's a lot more money, essentially, and contractors aren't that interested in small schemes. So that's one of many reasons why I'm keen to work with all area committees to see how we can, moving forward for new schemes, when they come forward next year, we can make sure we're delivering the best schemes at like a more of a holistic level, rather than an isolated level. I think that's really, really important to think about areas rather than particular issues. So that's just a bit on that. So I think for the purpose of this meeting, and happy to go into more detail, the projects we have at the moment with an Area Committee 3, I think you're probably all seen on paper. So I probably won't go into much detail on that. Other than that, what I am trying to do is finalise the local transport programme by area committees, and just to sort of double check that all the schemes that exist within each area committees are still priorities for the area committee, to ensure that we are delivering schemes that are politically relevant. I'm sure they might be, they might not be, but without having spoken to the area committees, it's hard for me to say. So that's kind of one of the main purposes of today, was to sort of run that past you and to gather any thoughts on that and feedback to the team as well. And then I believe in September we'll be working with you a bit further on I guess future schemes in terms of processes and whatnot, and how we can make them better as well. I'll leave it there probably, because I'm sure you have some questions to go there.
Thank you very much indeed, Josh. Councillor Potley, you had your hand up, and then Councillor Thomas, Councillor Austin.
There's a few little queries, if that's
sure.
Okay. So one is obviously the information in the papers doesn't include the decision date, as it were. So we don't know how far behind some of these projects are, but that would be quite useful in terms of assessing on those priorities. The second was around, once upon a time, it was possible for area committees to prioritise schemes. That's as in schemes that weren't necessarily being funded through the SIL or Section 106 process, but in other words, to prioritise a road safety scheme, for example, and those aren't on that list, on this list. I was just wondering why that was the case. And depending on the answer to that, I may have a third, if that's okay, Chair.
Okay.
The schemes here are the schemes that my team have given me based on their understanding of what the area committees have funded through SIL or Section 106. Now, if there's schemes missing, please do let me know. But this is what I've been I guess, reassuringly given by my team. But if that's not the case or you understand, please do let me know and I can report back on that.
It was just to say that the scheme I'm thinking of that's foremost in my mind was one that was agreed, I think, in 2020, that's next to a school which there have been collisions with children, and we cannot get that funded, obviously, through the area committees this year because the department has issued a declaration that it can't possibly do any more schemes. It doesn't have the capacity to look at schemes this year. So we'll be finally able to make a decision on that scheme or supporting that scheme more in, I believe, 2020.
It'll be next year, end of next year.
So end of 2026.
Yeah. Well, that's assuming the I believe it, because that's when we'll be making funding allocations for next year once the Transport Department's fallow year has expired.
On the assumption that we've caught up by then. Because this is my understanding, this is the third fallow year that we've had in that timescale in terms of SIL. I could be wrong.
Transport projects were approved in the last round of SIL. We obviously didn't do SIL allocations in 23-24, so this is the second year in effect, yeah.
Okay. I suppose what I'm asking is, is there anything ward councillors can do where we have a serious road safety concern?
Also a school, you say?
This is on a road with a school on it that has been asking for this change. It was agreed in 2020. The TRO was completed, I believe, prior to the end of 2023. I was told as recently as a couple of months ago that work would start on the scheme at the tail end of last month. Nothing has yet to happen. And it then didn't appear on the papers for this meeting.
Are you able to say what school it is you're referring to, or do I need to?
I can tell you the street is Redland Road. It's the junction of Elm Grove Road and Redland Road. It's a scheme that's prioritised by not even the prior area committee covering the area to this, but I think even the one before that.
Is it Grove Road Highway Improvements, 26th of November 2019, £25,000? Does that sound right?
Plausibly. Sorry, Grove Road. No,
That's
Grove Road.
So it's the Redden Road junction with...
Brennan Road and Elm Grove Road. So it's the southern, it's probably the best way of describing it, site for Cotton Gardens Primary School. The residents there have been phenomenally patient, waiting for this work to be done. But equally, I can think of a dozen other road safety schemes we would like to take forward in the ward. But at the moment, we can't do anything. And the idea that we're going to be waiting another 18 months.
I will take that away and just double check that scheme. I'm just looking at it here.
Could it be Eldon Park / Lower Redland Road Junction? Not that one.
That's
that's Lower Redland Road.
That's further on.
Okay.
Ironically, it's at the other end of the ward, but the road names sound really similar.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the allocation so I can...
I don't think, to be fair, I don't think it was a SIL allocation. I think it was a prioritised scheme by the area committee.
Right.
But it's as with SIL schemes, Section 106 schemes, prioritised road safety schemes, the prioritised road resurfacing schemes, very little of it seems to have actually happened in reality.
Yeah, sure. I'm pretty sure this will be part of a slightly separate programme, just not this, because if you'll be told the detailed design is done, the theory is done, it will be another programme, probably not this one. But can I get back to you ASAP on that?
That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that would be from probably a slightly different team. Part of my team, but a slightly different team. I'll get back to you on that, for sure. That's it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, thanks very much, John. My first question is just on 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Can the hot wall road...
That's the next item.
That's next item, okay, fine. In that case, in terms of the holistic level rather than the isolated, which you talked about, I think seeing all the schemes across the city, because it's a manageable spreadsheet, would be helpful. And I think, then if there's kind of like a 3 next to ones which are in area committee 3, then we can see, what the action is across the city, and then we can also see. I mean, you're talking about separate programmes. If we've got a spreadsheet of the separate programmes as well, then we can start to join up the different pieces of the jigsaw. It means that you then don't have to produce however many different spreadsheets you produce, however many area committees you've got, and then we can also look more holistically at the funding of small projects across the city.
Absolutely. I mean, I should have mentioned, obviously, we're quite fortunate that we've got the Clean Air Zone funding and the local transport contribution, £10 million. Now that for me is really, really key, because what we can do once it clears the backlog is go, there's a demand for cycle hangers in this area here, but when you look at it as a cell, so for example, Apsley Road, you've got Whiteledge Road, you've got Pembroke Road, you've got the A317 by the Downs. Let's look at that as a cell. Let's use council funding to match fund a wider suite of cycle hangers or cycle parking facilities rather than just a few bits. Tackle bits by area rather than by smaller areas, I think is a really important thing to do. And another advantage of that is you can attract more match funding. Because I think still funding is useful, but it's not going to deliver that much in terms of transport. Transport schemes are really, really expensive these days. It's mad. Material prices have gone off the roof. So the more we can deliver the higher value projects by bulking up schemes, the more contractors are going to be interested, the more we can attract match funding from external financials, and the better impact we have.
Yeah, and I think, following on from that, I think what I'm hearing you say is that we've got 3 levels really. We've got, the sort of the small area committee project stuff. We've then got kind of city small, low traffic neighbourhood type areas, and then we've got city-wide stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a danger as we start to segment into those that actually it becomes more impossible to do anything because you've got to join up A with B with C.
Yeah.
So I think how we have one view across the city, the kind of the smaller areas in the city, and then the really small stuff is going to be essential. And also the way that we've got, I mean, this is more of a strategic question, but how we are best allocating the fact that we've got that big 3-hour zone budget money to maximise effectiveness.
Absolutely, because it makes projects cheaper, makes it much more viable
Yeah.
for the trust.
In terms of historic projects, there are lots of projects probably from 10 years ago that will still be relevant from the old neighbourhood partnership, which at some stage, there's no point in rebooting those when there's no money. It's a waste of effort. But there does working out when the flow of money is going to start then means we can line things up sensibly rather than being over dependent on a list of priorities that might not be the most relevant ones. So I think it's getting that sight line of when the funding is going to start flowing through and not worrying too much about whether it's SIL money or Clean Air Zone money or core funding money.
Should probably say that I'm coming to the July Transport Connectivity Committee to officially draw down the CAS for this backlog scheme and then also to draw down CAS funding for the development of all the new schemes moving forward. So it's going to give us a lot more flexibility to play with, because obviously we have still section 106 funding. The big issue for us is that if the scheme isn't viable or we do further analysis and we can't deliver it, we don't get the SIL funding, which means we've got loads of officer time wasted. So the CAS money is going to give us that seed funding to develop projects without it being a risk, and allows us to do more and hopefully kind of provide wider impacts too. Anyway.
Thank you, Josh. I'm going to have Serena, and then I'm going to make a few points, and then Councillor Potney again. Sorry, Councillor Ralston.
I was glad to hear what you were saying about the top of Clifton Downward, so Apsley Road, Upper Belgrave Road, it was a bit of a hotspot, and just going down to a sort of more micro level. One of the projects on the table is Apsley Road traffic calming. I just want to know a little bit more, if you have any detail, you might not be able to off the top of your head. It is a real risk, that road. It's straight, you just mentioned it, between White Lanes and Pembroke Road.
Yeah.
There's a nursery on that road, and people do speed down it. So it seems to have got gummed up in the works. Have you any clue? A lot of residents are very concerned, right, to us quite a lot about it, when it might start? This is not initiated due to insufficient resourcing, and I get what you're saying about that. But
as soon as we've got the CAS drawn down, we can start. I think this is a cracking example actually of the risk of silent working, because Apsley Road is obviously has an issue with speeding.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, if you try and address it there, I could go into details of actually traffic calming Apsley Road. It's got a lot of driveways.
Yeah.
Really difficult to fit in those sorts of things, because you have to do road markings and all sorts of laying out, which is difficult to fit in. And actually, Apsley Road, we should be looking at that as a cell, as I mentioned, between Pembroke Road and Whiteley's Road and the Downs, because actually you might just move into the problem elsewhere. So when you're looking at solutions to issues like that, you need to look at it holistically, otherwise you risk just making the problem worse elsewhere. And I think a lot of other roads would argue they've got issues with speeding as well, or high traffic flows. It's you guys got there more than me, but so Apsley Road, as soon as we've got the funding, we'll be putting resources on it.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit about children's book, The Cat in the Hat. You move the problem just to somewhere else, don't you?
That's it. That's the risk, because when you try and deal with a solid problem, it's.
So what you're saying is you're going to look at it more as a cell rather than on a singular road.
When I get my engineers on Apsley Road,
yeah,
I'll be asking them to look at the whole area.
Okay.
Obviously, Apsley Road we know is a hot point, but we need to be looking at actually the whole area. Are we addressing everything by just looking at Apsley Road? We need to look at the surrounding roads. That's what any transport professional would do. With hard data. So I think some of the issues are we don't actually have the data when we're given schemes. So we're going to the data and we realise actually the issue that we were being given is not actually what the data is telling us. So I think the data is a really good part of that as well. And the CAS funding will allow us to actually get the data that we need to make really informed choices.
Brilliant. And you'll be able to keep us up to date as ward councillors on that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's very helpful.
Thank you. I'll just have a couple of points to raise myself on behalf of the projects in mind.
Is it possible to open a window? Will everyone be happy with that? It's very stuffy in here. Sorry.
Please, quite well. Thank you for raising it. We have been going for an hour and a quarter. Do people want 2 minutes to move around briefly, or should we just crack on? We are near the end. I'm not
grabbing water. I don't know everyone else is. Just for 2 minutes.
Okay. Shall we? We are in the middle of an item. If we zoom to the end of this, quickly, and if we can, then we'll do a quick comfort break, and then we'll just polish off the last item quickly if everyone's all right with that. Thank you. I should have, and I apologise, I should have probably done that before we got to this item. Limekiln Road, really happy that's been completed, although I really see what you mean with a six-fold increase in cost from the agreed funding there about the inflation for small projects. Avon Crescent, it says the progress update is awaiting outcome of planning conditions, and it is a Shakespearean tragedy almost that this is such a long-running saga of awaiting outcome of planning conditions. I think the expected completion date here is comical, frankly. I mean, this is an attack on yourself, but you'll be aware of the long-running issues with this particular proposal, and I think it's frustrating for everyone involved now that it's now in limbo, waiting for the finalised Western Harbour master plan to see what changes can actually be brought in there. Although I'm happy that we've now got the sort of political will to get those installed once we do know what's happening with Western Harbour. I'll just say to my colleagues, I will be advocating very heavily for that money to be put to good use as soon as we know what won't be in conflict with the master plan once that is decided upon. Councillor Potley, then you had a hand, and then I think we'll try and draw this item to a close.
It's just well, one of the things is very follow on from that. Can I just check, but the risk of it conflicting with the master plan in development for Western Harbour, is that a legal restriction?
Yeah, it would be a legal restriction of planning, because there'll be a condition in the planning that says that, you know, intervention is required when it's present, but we're not privy to this conversation. That's the tricky bit for us. We're just being told that the planning conditions can't be totally agreed yet and don't start working until that's happened. So it's difficult for us because we're kind of in limbo as well.
I mean, just for clarification though, on that specific point, I sat on the Development Control Committee that looked at this when the council came back to us and asked for permission to vary the original planning consent granted so that it didn't have to fulfil its obligations to the residents in that area. The committee turned them down flat and said, no, you agreed to do this. And in line with this proposal, you have to do this for the good of the local residents. And it looks like that's simply it's still not happened, awaiting the production of yet another planning document. And I'm just wondering if this isn't something that just needs to be referred back to the chair of the relevant planning committee, and then those planning conditions can just be agreed at that point in relation to the retrospective scheme.
There is, I mean, as the ward councillor, there is a practical blocker in that I've spoken about this with Ed Plowden. We went and did a site visit a few months ago. The council it would be a poor use of public funds if we spent this £52,000 on anything in the area if we don't know for sure that the master plan isn't going to mean that it will have to be torn up again and trees cut down or whatever in 5 years' time.
So it's not a legal blocker.
So I don't know what the legal blocker might be. That's not my area of specialism, but there is also a practical concern about not wanting to waste the money, or not wanting to expend the carbon budget unnecessarily if it might be coming down in 5 years. I'm not saying it would come down in 5 years, but right now there isn't that certainty because the master plan isn't finalised.
Gotcha.
So it's practical as well as legal, potentially.
Financial prudence, that's a different... Okay, that makes a lot more sense. And it sounded like, just for what it's worth, that we're at the point of saying all of these to be taken forward and information to come back on additional schemes.
That's been what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a different understanding or preference? Only 2 of these are in my ward. I'll take the steer of the other, Elm Lane and Dapsey Road, off the ward councillors on those.
Elm Lane, I don't have any details personally about, and I would really like to see what that's about, especially as its completion date's expected in December. I know there's been Elm Lane, Lower Redland Road.
Yeah.
There's been work recently completed, which is brilliant, on Lower Redland Road, the junction of Redland Road as it goes up to White Ladies and Blackburn Hill, with the school and the cameras. It's fantastic. I'm really pleased about that, the cycle route. But this junction, this bit, I don't know about, so I think George and I would welcome that.
Yeah, happy to set a briefing for you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brings me just to the second part of my inquiry then. Earlier when you said you wanted to look at this holistically and you'd instruct officers to look beyond what's been agreed, what's been requested here to, assessing a broader area, something that no one's asked for yet, because it's strategically in line with what Transport wants to do. Is that what that £60,000 increase in cost reflects?
The Apsley Road?
Yeah.
No, that's just how much it costs for traffic calming these days on one road.
That's just 40,000 increase in the cost from when the scheme was agreed to the present day.
Yeah.
Is inflation of
absolutely
800%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
£20,000 does not get you much in terms of highway civil schemes. I assure you.
So in other words, they would have saved £40,000 if they'd delivered this promptly when it was agreed, rather than wait till now.
No, I think probably it's a combination of that and probably not quite understanding the technical viability of traffic calming and Apsley Road, given the configuration of it, given that there's lots of crossovers and lots of driveways. There's a lot to take into consideration. But you're right, it would be closer to that amount 3 or 4 years ago. But yeah.
Thank you. That's we can blame Liz Truss for the inflation there, maybe. Are there any more questions or comments on this? The recommendation is that we confirm that we would like the local transport team to proceed with. I'm hearing all of these, with the exception of Limekiln Road, I suppose, because that's been completed. And for the programme to be updated accordingly. Are we happy to accept that recommendation? All in favour, raise their hands. Thank you. That decision is made. Do people want a quick break, or before we move on to the final item, 20-mile-per-hour roads, or should we? Or I think since we've only got one road, should we just try and wrap it up very quickly? We're going to just head through that quickly then. 20-mile-per-hour road suggestions.
You as well, Josh, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be. I think it's quite simple, really. I mean, Council Power was very keen that Area Committee put forward for this year locations where we can implement 20-mile-per-hour sort of infrastructure, whether that's road markings, clarifying 20-mile-per-hour schemes, or roundels on posts, and for us to consider and then move forward next year. Obviously, when we start developing the scheme again. Now, I don't know whether any were submitted beforehand.
Just the one. So obviously it was a very short. You had a very short amount of time to get back to us because this is the beginning of the conversation. And as we kind of set out, and Josh has made clear, none of the work in terms of delivering the scheme would be starting until 2026. So this was to enable the start of a conversation. It's not the only chance that people will get, as far as I understand. But the one that we did receive was Upper Belgrave Road, and that was from Councillor Ralston.
Thank you. I'll just note quickly, I was having a look at the layers on Pinpoint for 20-mile-per-hour limits. It does seem that the whole city, with the exception of part of Avonmouth, is covered by one. So obviously that's not the case. Not every road in the city is 20 miles per hour. But could that layer be updated maybe to more accurately reflect which roads are actually 20 miles per hour?
Yeah, we can make a note of that.
Thank you. I mean, that's probably one for the GIS team.
Yeah, actually, I'll have to raise that GIS.
Thank you. I mean, from my own perspective, it was a bit frustrating because all the roads in my ward are either already residential, arterial, or having works done to them, so not really suitable for suggesting further changes at this point. But I welcome our inclusion in this. Putting roads forward for 20 miles per hour is something we can all get behind, I think. Councillor Poultney?
I just wanted to confirm, I apologise, I'm going by information that may be woefully out of date. There was a time when I remember the city was considering 20 mile an hour zones or 20 mile an hour limits, as in zones were almost unenforceable, whereas 20 mile an hour limits could be introduced and would be enforceable but were more time consuming and more difficult. And I just wanted to check, because obviously I've heard just in this item that refers to as 20 mile an hour zones and limits. Is that still a meaningful distinction? Are we talking about one rather than the other?
My understanding was it was not the zones that Council Power was kind of interested in communities progressing. It was more location hotspots, I guess, 20 mile per hour roads that you wanted to upgrade with the infrastructure to support that. Or was, yeah. That doesn't answer your question, so.
Well, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
Are we are we talking about roads that are not currently limited to 20 miles an hour and making them limited to 20 miles an hour?
Yes. Yes, my understanding is that, but I think council, I mean, I must say this is Councillor Baldwin's request, and I've not had much part of this conversation, so I'm probably seeking clarification from them after.
Yeah, absolutely. The same here. It's something we were asked to kind of bring forward, but without. And I don't know the difference between a zone or a road personally, so I can't comment on that.
It's I'll pick up with them after, because it's. I was told he wants locations as in roads, not as zones.
That's why.
Yeah.
And just in respect to that, sorry, I might have misunderstood what you just said. It sounded like we might be talking about adding 20 mile an hour infrastructure to roads that were already 20 mile an hour, as in additional speed calming measures.
Yeah, some of them might be. Yeah.
So we might be talking about that as well.
I think there's a piece of work to clarify that.
Yeah, thank you. No, those are three very different things to me, so good to know exactly what we're...
Yeah.
Aside from just to say, would wholeheartedly support the suggestion here, just not necessarily in isolation.
Sure.
Thank you. I'll note it's 20 mile per hour limit on pinpoint for whatever that's worth. Councillor Thomas and then Councillor Roston.
I'm keen to see Hotwell Road as a 20 mile an hour limit. With trunk roads, have we got limited capability to do that? I mean, London seems to be able to do it, but Ed Plowden was saying that roads, we've kind of done all the 20 mile an hour roads that we can, basically, so I don't quite know where things sit in terms of what the art of the possible is, particularly on some of those trunk roads.
Yeah, I'll take that away. My understanding is that we've ticked a lot of them off, but we do have authority to implement these locations. It just depends on, I think, enforcement is a big one, really, because for enforcement you kind of need cameras, and it's always very difficult to get camera coverage that we would like, given that we rely on the police a lot for that as well, and they go through a various process themselves. So, yeah, it's happy to find out more on that, and get back to you.
Thank you. I mean, I'd echo that. I'd love to see Hotwell Road as 20 mile per hour. It's just it's an arterial A road. It's very difficult to make that case, unfortunately. Councillor Rawson, I think that we'll try and wrap up after this.
Yeah. As regards Upper Belgrave Road, I'm really pushing for this because I think real issues here. It's unfortunate we didn't get to see the photographs today, and it would have been great to have heard from Mr. Holmes and his experiences on that road, which I know is anecdotal, but in the meantime, before it becomes a 20 mile per hour road, I'm quite very concerned about the safety on it, whatever happens next, because the police say they are unable to do anything as regards speed monitoring, there's no way to do it. We need some sort of measures in place quite urgently, I think. So the local police, I don't know if they've got data on what's happening on that road, but it could do with some enforcement measures, I think, generally. But in the long term, it really does need to be 20 miles per hour, because at the moment vehicles are, and emergency vehicles going very, very fast downhill, specifically from Blackboy Hill towards the zoo, so it really is concerning.
I think it's just to sort of tie into that, which kind of goes into the whole kind of holistic. I keep banging on about it, but I think it really is important, because I think when people go into residential areas by car, visually, I think we're not going to be able to get a camera on every road. Bristol, this is never going to happen. So it then comes down to how do we design our roads to make sure that car drivers are aware that it's just a different space, and even going into a traffic cell on the residential area, just the narrowness of the roads, the way cars are configured, is really, really important to that. And I think traffic flow is obviously really, really key. That's obviously a big part of it. So I think the stuff within our power that is probably more realistic is how we design the road to make sure that cars are aware that they're a guest essentially in a residential area. That's the key thing. And there's lots of tools at our disposal. Cameras are obviously part of that, but you don't have much power over it because they are costly, and we rely on the police, and there's a lot of process to go through to get there, and quite time consuming as well. So certainly some of the schemes that we deliver as part of our committees will definitely be part of that as well.
Thank you very much. If none of the councillors or officers have anything else, question mark? I think that is the end of the item. So we've noted the item on 20 mile per hour zones, suggestions, excuse me. And if there's nothing else, that is this meeting closed. Thank you. Oh, okay, something else then?
Any other business, which is just to let you know that I'm going on maternity leave at the end of June, so I will be handing over to Julia, who will be leading these meetings. There will also be a backfill from my post, so you'll meet that person in due course.
Well, congratulations, thank you, and thank you very much for all your work so far. Thank you very much to members of the public as well, and with that, the meeting is closed, and I look forward to the next one. Thank you all.
Thanks everyone.